Christian here with KQ Fitness, back to talk about the importance of a plank. So I, as well as many other trainers, consider the plank the center of all movement. When you think about other movements and other basic human movement patterns that we do, be it a squat or a deadlift or even a lunge, what we're doing there is we're establishing that neutrality of the back there and the neck. So let's walk through it. We come into a squat, following different cues, a very set of cues to keep your back neutral here. Well, while doing that, you're also maintaining essentially a nice neutral position of the core as well, something you would do during a plank. Let's apply that to the deadlift. Same thing. And then a lunge. Take a step forward here. So I'm establishing like maybe there's a wall in front of me on the ground here, imaginary wall. I'm doing an elbow plank here. As I'm moving myself back up to that starting position, I'm keeping that back neutral, also keeping my core tight at the same time. So it looks like what's called a moving plank. Let's take that to the floor at an actual plank. But I like to start with this when I'm first training a client, getting to know them or train them for the first time, because it can lead you in a lot of different directions in terms of how to train that person with strength training goals, just based on their ability to plank. Okay, so let's walk through it. Hands are going to be directly underneath my elbows and lined up underneath my shoulders. As I bring my feet out, I want to establish a width of a hip width apart. My toes tucked in on the ground. And also, something to establish here, like we did for the squat, hinge, lunge, nice lengthening of the back here. Neck is neutral, back is neutral. I want to actually tuck my shoulder blades down and back, kind of like you're squeezing your shoulder blades down. This motion here, because you don't want them to be extremely high up here. We're trying to shift that weight or those joints towards a more efficient center of gravity here. So by keeping them back here, I'm lining them up underneath my hands here. Keeping my hips up, you'll notice that your joints kind of line up from the shoulders, down to the knees, down to the hips, down to the feet, or the ankles, I should say. So a nice straight line there. So what we're doing here, establishing that line of joints here. So it kind of looks like a plane like this. Of course, everybody's anatomy is different. Some planks might look a little bit more neutral or parallel to the ground. That's a hand plank. So it's going to have naturally a line that kind of curves, not so parallel to the ground. But let's come down to the elbow. So we're just going to replace, the only thing we're going to replace is where our hands are, with putting our elbows there instead. So by doing this, we're still keeping, ideally, a line up of the joint, squeezing and tucking the shoulder blades back and down, tucking the toes in. So my ankle joint, knee joint, hip joints, shoulder joints are lined up. Doing our best to keep that plank. Occasionally you will see, maybe for yourself you might experience this, or I typically see clients that might have a compromised plank where their hips come down. So it kind of drags down like this, and it just gives me an idea of where to start the program. We might start on more activation of the glutes, recognizing movements that incorporate tilting of the pelvis or movement in and around your hip flexors, working on mobility of the hip flexors, strengthening the core, strengthening the area encompassing your shoulder girdle, like your chest, your back, and the other more finite muscles in that area. So it's just a great starting point. As it is the center of movement, it should be the center of your training too. So it can tell you a lot about somebody in terms of where the trajectory of their strength training journey should go. Okay, so that's the importance of the plank. You want to be able to execute both in a stable position on the ground, in a moving position too during other exercises, and you want to just get familiar with finally how it feels, right? Because when that becomes natural, that makes your other movements of your strength routine more effective. So those are some helpful cues to help you establish the perfect plank.